Intel just launched some well-reviewed chips with the 250K and 270K Plus, showing very good multi-threaded performance productivity workloads and holding up pretty well in gaming as well against the AMD competition. AMD is now taking this as an opportunity to announce a new chip with the Ryzen 9 9950X3D2 Dual Edition, which will have 208 megabytes of total cache and will be launching on April 22nd. Now, X3D2 just means that both of the dies on the chip, because it is a dual chip die, will have the 3D V cache. Now, generally people get excited about the 3D V cache parts for gaming, but AMD doesn't seem to be announcing any kind of gaming performance for this. They seem to be focusing on productivity, which makes sense since the 8-core chips like the 9800X3D and 9850X3D do really make more sense for gaming, where going on to that second CCD doesn't really help. So really, this chip is likely going to be extremely expensive and give you single-digit performance gains in productivity workloads that happen to be particularly cache sensitive. So honestly, not something I personally care a whole heck of a lot about. And there has been some questions about whether Intel would also be launching a higher end version of this new refresh with a 290K Plus. But according to PC Games Hardware's information they got from Intel, the answer is no. There will not be a 290K Plus incoming, so it's looking like the 250K and 270K are what we're getting from this new launch. Now, as far as the prices that these are hitting on the market, it looks like the 250K is available in the US for $200, $20 more if you want the integrated GPU. And the 270K I'm not seeing currently in stock, and it's listed at $330 out of stock. Now, as far as the AMD competition directly for these, as far as in gaming performance, something like the 9600X can currently be found for less than $200 and offers about the same gaming performance as the 250K, although the 250K did seem to win in the 1% lows in most of the reviews I watched, and maybe have a couple percent lead on average. Now, the 9700X from AMD, though, that's $265. And when you're getting that 250K, you're getting a bunch of multi-threaded performance in those productivity workloads. So this could be an attractive option if it wasn't so expensive to build a PC at all right now with memory pricing. Also, we know that this is the end of the line for this motherboard platform for Intel, whereas AMD's chips, if you buy in here, you would then have another, 9600X, not 9600K. You would have another generation coming. Now, how much of a boost will you get from that generation? Would it be worth actually upgrading to a one generation newer part? I'm going to be honest, I understand the argument, but at the same time, I think that if you were buying in with like the beginning of the 7000 series from AMD and you knew that you had a multiple generations incoming to upgrade, that might be a big selling point. If we're coming in now, it's like if you buy one of these chips now from AMD, are you really going to be upgrading on this same motherboard platform that soon? Or would you be more likely waiting for the next generation of products? So I think we're getting to a point in the generations where, sure, it's nice to have one more upgrade incoming on the platform, but I'm not sure how big of a selling point that is. Now, on the mobile side of things, Macs have just been absolutely shaking up the market with the MacBook Neo coming in at a very low price, but not super powerful specs, but good enough for most people's just general web browsing that they do for most school and work. Some people need heavier duty stuff, but honestly, most people don't. Well, I saw this at videocards.com, although it looks like the testing here was done by ETA Prime, looking at, well, if you actually just improve the cooling on the MacBook Neo, the gaming performance increases significantly. Now, I know that Macs aren't really known for gaming, but there are games that do work. And they saw that No Man's Sky would quickly thermal throttle down to about 30 FPS and 105 degrees Celsius, whereas sticking on a copper plate that then allows it to transfer heat into the aluminum shell allowed it to jump back up to around 58 FPS and around 83 to 84 Celsius temperatures. Synthetic benchmarks not showing quite that, like almost doubling of the performance, but showing noticeably improved performance. Also trying out some a little bit of a liquid cooling radiator on there and things like that. So anyway, I'm interested in these as far as anybody I know who just needs a computer, not really for gaming, but just for school and work and portability, that kind of thing, and want something affordable. Nvidia is having apparently yet another driver issue. They've had, seems like more driver issues and hotfixes this year than is typical. However, the latest one seems to be in Arc Knight's Enfield. There was a stutter caused by the latest driver update, and it looks like they now have a hotfix which is designed to fix that. Now, I've seen some comments on my channel seeing if I would revisit Resident Evil Requiem on the latest drivers and see if we're still seeing those performance issues that I had done videos about previously, where different driver versions were providing different levels of performance on different GPUs. Honestly, if there's not a lot going on, tomorrow I might have time to do that, but don't take that as an absolute promise. It is something I might have a chance to take a look at. Now, regarding other news like Xbox, which has a new CEO, it's possible that they'll be looking at a lower-priced Game Pass version. We'd seen last year Game Pass pricing going through the roof, making a lot of people, at least in the comment section, say that they were going to cancel if they were on it. I'm not sure if we have figures on what exactly happened with subscription numbers and things like that. Although I think from the business perspective, if you're like, well, if we, double the price, but 30% of people leave the service, we still make more money, so I'm not, from the business end, you got to look at that, I guess, cost benefit of, okay, you lose subscribers, but the ones who stick around maybe pay you more money, and it ends up more than making up for it. But they are apparently looking into a lower priced version, and it sounds like there's even some considerations in bundling it with a Netflix subscription or something like that. Now, for me, that would only be useful if they actually made it significantly less money than getting the Netflix subscription and the Xbox subscription separately. And to be honest, I did cancel my Xbox Game Pass subscription with the price hike because it was just like, no, I'm not using this enough to pay that much per month. Anyway, we've also been seeing a whole bunch of news about Sony's new PSSR upscaling and its shared roots with FSR upscaling, but apparently there are some differences, and I had speculated that it really had to be an INT8 version, and it is absolutely confirmed now by Mark Cerny that the PS5 Pro's new PSSR is indeed an INT8 version of an upscaling algorithm that is very, very similar to FSR 4.1 that we have on PC. So once again, this kind of raises those questions about getting an INT8 version officially from AMD that would support older GPUs like RDNA 2 and RDNA 3. And I will once again reiterate that I think AMD should absolutely do that. And again, it's clear that it can run on INT8. However, it is important to note that the PlayStation 5 Pro, there we go, I knew it was a missing part of the name, does have 300 TOPS of machine learning acceleration, and I believe that is beyond the dedicated hardware level on RDNA 2 and 3. So there are some questions about performance level if it was the same exact version. But once again, with all of that in mind, I will say that we still already have seen an INT8 version that does run on RDNA 2 and 3, and in at least some games, even though it does take a performance penalty compared to older versions of FSR, it does often make up for it in image quality improvements to where you could push to a more aggressive upscaling setting to still get to similar levels of performance you may have been getting before, but with better image quality. I really, really can't emphasize enough that AMD should be giving us some sort of INT8 version of FSR4 on RDNA 2 and 3. And again, PSSR2, which looks almost identical to FSR 4.1, is showing that it's at least possible to do with INT8. Again, though, there are differences in the level of machine learning acceleration on the different GPUs. And speaking of GPUs, Intel did launch an Arc Pro B70, a big battle mage GPU, but it's not really targeting gaming, and the price is almost $1,000. Now, that might sound like an insane cost, but it is important to note that compared to other professional graphics cards, that's actually could be seen as a bargain in certain workloads if Intel's claims are to be believed. All my sources will be linked in the video description. I saw this from WCCF Tech, but it doesn't look like independent testing. It looks like a Intel slide. But they're claiming that the Intel Arc B70 shows up to 2x tokens per dollar versus the Nvidia RTX Pro 4000 when using Linux. And I think that that's basically due to the price difference. Like, there's similar levels of performance, but we're talking $949 versus $1,800. That is a pretty big difference. But again, I'm more interested in the gaming side of GPUs rather than these professional products and all that. So I'm going to move along here. Another big news in the PC and gaming space is the massive layoffs from Epic Games due to apparently a bit of a downturn in Fortnite revenue, although you have to wonder if the amount of money that's being thrown at the Epic Games Store and various lawsuits against Google and Apple and all of that, if maybe that money had been used for other purposes, or some portion of it had been squirreled away for a rainy day, then maybe we wouldn't have to see 1,000 people being laid off from Epic Games, and we will be seeing 3 Fortnite modes going offline because of that. Now, Epic Games has claimed that this is not related to just AI, assuming that they can cut costs and use AI more to make up for the employees. Not that that's any, reassurance to the employees who are now out on the job market. And related to this, I mean, game costs are absolutely through the roof right now. We're seeing news that apparently AAA game budgets are now surpassing $300 million, which is mostly developer salaries. And you've got to see that the games industry does seem to be in a bit of a crunch right now, where there used to be some pretty exponential looking growth to the game market, but that growth has slowed down considerably over the last few years, whereas developer salaries haven't, and the kinds of work that it takes to actually put out one of these gigantic games hasn't slowed down. It's just growing. And so you just get this feeling that the games industry is in a really bad place right now with how much it costs and how long it takes to make these big AAA games. And can you actually make back that money if the market segment isn't growing at the pace that it used to be, and when you were probably planning for all of these big budgets and all of that? And so there are definitely a lot of developers looking at using generative AI to make game development faster. The general trend seems to be that developers promise that the final output that humans will see when playing the game will be human-made. However, that there are tons of developers saying that they are using generative AI in the development process to, try out different ideas, generate placeholders, etc. And then, like I mentioned in a previous video, we've seen some in the industry, like a former Blizzard boss, just saying that developers should just man up and just say, yeah, we're using generative AI to save money, and here it is in the game. You'll get your games faster, etc. And like I said, this is going to be a big turning point, I think, and a big battle we'll see in the industry here, is this pressure of budgets and how long it takes to make a game. You've got generative AI that could potentially speed things up, but is that the type of games that people want to play? Is there going to be are we seeing like, when you see all the outcry against this, how big of the market is that? Is the general gamer even going to know or care? So are the companies going to, get boycotted and it actually hurts them or not, etc.? Like, this is going to be just a huge thing moving forward. Just to pay attention to in the industry is what is going on with generative AI in game development. And I think that's the news that I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Hope you found it useful and or interesting, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.